Chapter 1. The Man Who Knew Too Much. The next morning, a black helicopter descended onto the private helipad of the Reyes mansion. Its powerful rotors stirred the trees as dozens of security personnel stepped out first. Then, an elderly man with silver hair and calm eyes slowly descended. He carried only a simple walking cane. Yet every guard treated him with the utmost respect. Inside the mansion, Victor looked through the window. He's really here. Grandpa Raphael recognized the old man immediately. Professor Emilio Salazar. Even Grandpa couldn't hide his surprise. He disappeared from public life years ago. Professor Emilio Salazar, the world's most respected scientist, a Nobel Prize winner, founder of one of the largest scientific research organizations on Earth. Many even called him the father of modern technology. Yet today, he had come personally to meet a 17-year-old high school student. Adrian quietly walked downstairs. He wore a simple white hoodie and black pants. His hair was still slightly messy from sleep. He blinked after seeing the distinguished guest. Professor Emilio, so he came earlier this time. The entire Reyes family heard those words. Earlier, Victor's heart skipped a beat. Professor Emilio smiled warmly. So, you recognize me? Adrian nodded politely. Yes. The professor laughed. I've never met you before. Yet you don't seem surprised. Adrian remained silent. He couldn't exactly explain that he had known the professor in his previous life. Everyone gathered in the living room. Tea was served. No one spoke for several moments. Finally, Professor Emilio looked directly at Adrian. I have a question. If you knew a disaster was coming, what would you do? Adrian answered without hesitation. I'd stop it. The professor nodded. What if no one believed you? I'd stop it anyway. What if the whole world called you a liar? I'd still save them. Silence filled the room. Professor Emilio smiled. Exactly as I expected. He opened a leather briefcase. Inside were classified documents, satellite images, medical reports, climate data, economic projections. Every page carried a government security seal. Victor's expression changed. Even he wasn't authorized to see documents like these. Professor Emilio slid the folder toward Adrian. I want your opinion. Adrian quietly read everything. His eyes moved rapidly. Page after page. Until he closed the folder. There are mistakes. Everyone froze. Professor Emilio leaned forward. What kind? Adrian calmly pointed to a map. This earthquake prediction is off by 18 kilometers. He flipped another page. This virus mutation won't happen next year. It happens 8 months earlier. Another page. The tsunami evacuation route is wrong. He looked up. People will die. The room became completely silent. Professor Emilio stared at Adrian. Not with disbelief, but with relief. I knew it. Victor frowned. Knew what? The old scientist sighed. For years, I've had a feeling someone else understood the future better than I did. He looked directly into Adrian's eyes. And today, I found that person. Adrian quietly lowered his gaze. He's still as sharp as ever. The family heard every word. Grandpa whispered. He knew the professor before. Victor immediately understood. Before, in Adrian's previous life, Professor Emilio stood up. I won't ask where your knowledge comes from. Everyone deserves their secrets. He smiled kindly. But I have a request. He extended his hand. Help me save people. Adrian looked outside the window. Children were playing in the nearby park. Birds flew peacefully through the blue sky. He remembered the disasters he couldn't stop in his previous life. The earthquakes, the pandemics, the floods, the wars, millions of lives, gone forever. He slowly stood. Then, for the first time since his reincarnation, Adrian smiled confidently. All help. The professor smiled back. Then history is about to change. That afternoon, the professor left as quietly as he had arrived. Before boarding the helicopter, he handed Adrian a small silver badge. Engraved on it were 3 simple words. Future Research Alliance. Only 12 people in the world possessed one. Adrian had just become the youngest member in its history. That evening, Adrian sat alone in the garden beside the koi pond. The fish swam peacefully beneath the moonlight. He held the silver badge in his hand. This life really is different. In my previous life, I spent decades building wealth. This time, I'll spend my life protecting people. Inside the mansion, his family heard every word. Elena quietly smiled. Victor placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Grandpa looked proudly toward Adrian through the window. Our grandson was born to change the world. Far away, deep inside a hidden underground facility, a mysterious man watched Adrian's photo displayed on a massive screen. The Future Research Alliance has recruited him. He smiled coldly. So, the game has finally begun. A single command echoed through the dark room. Keep your eyes on Adrian Reyes. Whatever happens, do not lose sight of the boy who knows the future. Chapter 2, A Future Worth Protecting. Morning sunlight poured into Adrian's bedroom. He slowly opened his eyes and stared at the silver badge resting on his bedside table. Future Research Alliance. Even in his previous life, joining this organization had taken him until he was 32. This time, he had received the invitation at 17. Everything is happening much earlier. Downstairs, the entire Reyes family heard his thoughts. Victor smiled bitterly. Our son keeps comparing this life with his previous one. Grandma gently sighed. I wish he didn't have to carry so many memories. After breakfast, Professor Emilio's black luxury sedan arrived once again. This time, only the professor stepped out. No guards today, Adrian asked quietly. Professor Emilio chuckled. I trust you. The two sat in the mansion's peaceful garden beside the koi pond. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the colorful koi swim beneath the clear water. Finally, the professor broke the silence. Adrian, do you know why I founded the Future Research Alliance? Adrian slowly nodded. To protect humanity. The old man's eyes widened. That's exactly what I told the founding members. He smiled knowingly. You really do know far more than you should. Professor Emilio placed a tablet on the table. A satellite image appeared. A coastal province. Beautiful beaches. Peaceful fishing villages. Schools. Hospitals. Families. This place will be struck by a devastating typhoon in 3 months, the professor said quietly. In our timeline, over 3,000 people died. Adrian looked at the image. His expression became serious. Not this time. He quickly began writing. Evacuation routes. Flood-prone areas. Emergency shelter locations. Supply distribution plans. Medical response teams. Communication networks. Satellite monitoring adjustments. Within 30 minutes, a complete disaster prevention plan was finished. Professor Emilio stared at the thick stack of papers. You prepared this, without using a computer. Adrian looked toward the ocean shown on the map. I've seen what happens if we fail. Back inside the mansion, the Reyes family heard every thought. I remember children trapped beneath collapsed schools. Entire families, waiting for rescue that never came. I remember every face. Elena quietly wiped away tears. Lucas hugged his older brother the moment Adrian entered the house. Adrian blinked. Lucas. His younger brother smiled. I just wanted to hug you. Adrian smiled gently and returned the hug. Thank you. That afternoon, at school, the biology teacher announced a science innovation competition. The winning project will represent the country internationally. The classroom immediately became excited. Students formed teams. Ideas flew everywhere. Robots. Solar-powered vehicles. Smart agriculture. Medical devices. Adrian quietly looked out the window. I don't really need to join. His class advisor walked over. Adrian, I've already registered you. Of course you did. The teacher laughed. We're all looking forward to your project. After classes, several classmates nervously approached him. Adrian, can we be on your team? We want to learn from you. Adrian looked at their hopeful expressions. In his previous life, he had always worked alone. He had pushed everyone away. This time, he didn't want to repeat that mistake. After a long silence, he gave a small nod. Okay. The group erupted with excitement. Really? Thank you. We'll work hard. Adrian smiled faintly. Working with friends doesn't seem so bad. That evening, he sat in his room with a blank notebook. At the top of the page, he wrote, Science Fair Project. He thought quietly. Something simple. Something useful. Something that could save lives. Suddenly, his pencil stopped. A memory surfaced. A low-cost portable medical scanner. In his previous life, it had been invented nearly 15 years later. It could detect life-threatening illnesses within minutes. It was cheap enough for small rural clinics. Adrian's eyes lit up. This could save millions. He immediately began sketching. Circuit designs. Sensor layouts. AI diagnostic algorithms. Power management systems. Every detail flowed naturally onto the paper. Downstairs. His family heard everything. Victor smiled proudly. He doesn't even think about winning. Grandpa nodded. He only thinks about helping people. Grandma looked toward the ceiling. Our Adrian was given another life for a reason. Late that night, as Adrian finished the final sketch, he quietly whispered to himself. This time, no one who can be saved will be left behind. Far away, inside the hidden underground facility, the mysterious organization watched Adrian's latest activities. One man frowned. He's moving faster than expected. Another replied coldly. If he succeeds, our plans for the future will collapse. The room fell silent. Then the leader gave a single order. Begin phase 1. For the first time, someone wasn't just watching Adrian. They were preparing to move against him. Chapter 3. The Miracle Medicine. The following day, Adrian arrived at school carrying a simple black backpack. Hidden inside was the notebook containing the blueprint for the portable medical scanner. His teammates gathered around him before classes began. There were 5 of them. Daniel, the engineering enthusiast. Mia, the class valedictorian. Ethan, a talented programmer. Claire, skilled in design and presentations. Noah, excellent at research. Everyone looked excited. So, Daniel grinned. What are we building? Adrian quietly placed the notebook on the table. I have an idea. The team gathered around. As Adrian flipped through the pages, everyone slowly fell silent. Detailed sketches, circuit diagrams, sensor placement, artificial intelligence algorithms, power consumption calculations. Everything had already been planned. Mia blinked repeatedly. You drew all this. Adrian nodded. Last night. Daniel looked ready to faint. Last night. Adrian pointed to the first page. This is a portable medical scanner. It can detect heart disease, certain cancers, internal bleeding, and several infections. Within 5 minutes, the classroom became completely silent. Noah whispered, if this works, it'll change medicine forever. Adrian simply replied, that's the goal. Meanwhile, at the Future Research Alliance headquarters, Professor Emilio reviewed Adrian's proposal. The old scientist slowly removed his glasses. Impossible. His assistant looked confused. Sir, the technology in this blueprint is at least 15 years ahead of today's medical science. The assistant swallowed. Should we stop him? Professor Emilio smiled. No, we help him. That afternoon, the team stayed after school. Electronic components covered the laboratory tables. Daniel assembled the hardware. Ethan programmed the AI. Mia checked every calculation. Claire designed the portable casing. Noah organized the medical data. Meanwhile, Adrian quietly walked between each teammate. He rarely gave long explanations. Only short sentences. Move that sensor. Lower the voltage. Rewrite line 83. Use ceramic insulation. Simple. Precise. Every correction solved another problem. Daniel finally laughed. I've never met anyone who can explain complicated science with so few words. Adrian smiled awkwardly. Habit. Back at the Reyes mansion. The family listened to Adrian's thoughts while he worked. Daniel is talented. Mia learns incredibly fast. Ethan could become one of the world's greatest programmers. I'm glad I'm not working alone this time. Elena smiled warmly. Our Adrian finally has friends. Lucas cheered. Team Adrian. Olivia laughed. They're becoming his second family. 3 days later, the first prototype was finished. A compact white device no larger than a lunchbox. Everyone stared at it. Daniel scratched his head. So, who's testing it? Silence. Then, Professor Emilio entered the laboratory. I will. Everyone turned in shock. Professor. The old scientist smiled. If this invention is what Adrian claims, it deserves a proper test. He placed his hand on the scanner. The device emitted a soft blue light. Scanning. 5 seconds. 10. 30. The AI analyzed millions of medical patterns. Finally, a result appeared. Minor blockage detected in the left coronary artery. Recommendation: immediate examination. The laboratory became silent. Professor Emilio frowned. I've never had heart problems. Adrian calmly replied. You haven't. Yet. Everyone stared at him. The blockage becomes dangerous in 8 months. If treated now, it disappears completely. Professor Emilio immediately arranged a hospital examination. The next morning, the hospital called. The doctors were speechless. The scanner had been right. A tiny blockage had been discovered. Too small for ordinary checkups. But dangerous if left untreated. The doctors treated it immediately. Professor Emilio laughed happily. Adrian, you didn't just invent a machine. You saved my life. News of the invention quietly spread through the Future Research Alliance. Scientists from around the world requested to see the prototype. Medical experts called it the miracle scanner. Meanwhile, Adrian simply packed his school bag. Tomorrow's history quiz. I should study. Professor Emilio burst into laughter after hearing those words through Adrian's family's retelling. After changing modern medicine, he's worried about a history quiz. That evening, the Reyes family celebrated with a homemade dinner. Grandma prepared Adrian's favorite dishes. Lucas proudly held up a handmade banner. Congratulations, Kuya. Adrian scratched his cheek shyly. They're celebrating something I haven't even finished yet. Victor smiled. You've already saved one life. Elena gently hugged her son. And you'll save millions more. Adrian looked around the table. His smiling parents. His laughing siblings. His proud grandparents. A gentle smile appeared on his face. This life is already better than my first. Far away, inside the underground headquarters of the mysterious organization, the leader crushed a report in his hand. The miracle scanner. If that invention reaches the world, our plans will fail. His eyes turned cold. Prepare the Shadow Division. This time, we're taking Adrian Reyes. Chapter 4, The Young Inventor. 3 days later, the miracle scanner prototype had become the most discussed project inside the Future Research Alliance. Only a handful of scientists had seen it. Yet every one of them left the laboratory speechless. Some called it a revolution. Others called it impossible. Adrian simply called it unfinished. Inside the school laboratory, Daniel stared at Adrian in disbelief. You've improved it again. Adrian nodded. The battery lasts 6 hours now. It used to last 4. Mia adjusted her glasses. You solved that overnight. Yes. Everyone exchanged helpless smiles. Working with Adrian had become a daily surprise. Professor Emilio visited the laboratory that afternoon. He carefully examined the newest prototype. This version is almost ready. Adrian quietly shook his head. No, it still costs too much. The professor looked confused. The price? Adrian nodded. If hospitals in poor provinces can't afford it, I've failed. Silence filled the room. Every scientist looked at Adrian. Most inventors dreamed of making fortunes. Adrian only cared about making it affordable. Meanwhile, at the Reyes mansion, Victor heard every thought. The production cost is still 18% too high. Children in remote villages deserve the same healthcare as people in big cities. Victor smiled proudly. My son is negotiating with himself to save strangers. Grandma quietly wiped away another tear. The following week, the National Science Innovation Competition officially began. Hundreds of schools gathered at the country's largest convention center. Television crews filled the entrance. Government officials attended. University professors served as judges. Adrian's team quietly entered carrying the miracle scanner. Daniel whispered, I've never been this nervous. Claire laughed weakly. My hands are shaking. Adrian looked at them. We'll be okay. Just 4 words. Yet everyone instantly calmed down. Inside the exhibition hall, students proudly demonstrated their inventions. Solar-powered irrigation systems, agricultural drones, recycling machines, educational robots. The judges nodded with interest. Then, they arrived at Adrian's booth. Professor Emilio stood nearby but intentionally remained silent. One of the judges smiled politely. So, what does your project do? Adrian gently placed the scanner on the table. It helps doctors. Another judge raised an eyebrow. How? Adrian activated the device. A volunteer stepped forward. The scanner emitted a soft blue glow. Within seconds, the screen displayed detailed diagnostic results. Heart rate, blood oxygen, early warning indicators, potential health risks. The judges stared silently. One professor whispered, "Impossible." Another checked the device twice. No blood sample, no needles, no radiation. Adrian calmly shook his head. None. A medical doctor serving as one of the judges immediately volunteered. Test me. The scanner analyzed him. Few seconds later, a warning appeared. Early stage type 2 diabetes risk. Recommendation: immediate lifestyle adjustment and laboratory confirmation. The doctor frowned. I feel perfectly healthy. Professor Emilio smiled knowingly. You should still get checked. The next morning, hospital tests confirmed the scanner's diagnosis. The doctor personally returned to the competition. He bowed deeply before Adrian. You may have just saved my life. Every student inside the convention hall watched in stunned silence. Applause erupted throughout the building. The judges gathered privately. Their discussion lasted almost an hour. Finally, the chief judge walked onto the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's grand champion is Team Reyes High School. The convention center exploded with cheers. Daniel nearly cried. Claire hugged Mia. Noah jumped in celebration. Ethan laughed uncontrollably. Adrian quietly smiled. I'm glad everyone is happy. Back home, the Reyes family watched the live broadcast together. Lucas screamed so loudly the neighbors probably heard him. Kuya won. Grandpa laughed proudly. I knew he would. Grandma had already prepared a celebration feast. Victor simply looked at the television. His eyes became slightly red. My son, you've become someone the whole country is proud of. Late that night, while everyone celebrated, Adrian quietly returned to his room. He placed the gold trophy on a shelf. Then, he looked at the miracle scanner. Winning wasn't the goal. Now, how do I manufacture millions of these? Downstairs, everyone heard his thoughts. Olivia laughed. He won the biggest science competition in the country. And he's already thinking about helping more people. Professor Emilio, who had stayed for dinner, smiled proudly. That is exactly why Adrian will change the world. Far away, inside the hidden underground headquarters, the Shadow Division commander watched Adrian lifting the trophy on television. He slowly smiled. So that's the boy. Prepare the operation. This time, we're bringing him back. The hunt for Adrian Reyes had officially begun. Chapter 5. Saving Grandpa's Future. A quiet Sunday morning, the Reyes mansion was filled with the delicious aroma of Grandma Teresa's breakfast. Laughter echoed through the dining room. For everyone else, it was just another peaceful family day. For Adrian, it was the most important day of his second life. Because today, according to his memories from his previous life, his grandfather would receive the first warning sign of the heart disease that would eventually take his life. Adrian quietly watched Grandpa Raphael laugh with Lucas. His grandfather looked healthy, strong, energetic. No one would suspect anything was wrong. But Adrian remembered everything. 3 months from now, Grandpa will collapse while watering the garden. 6 months later, the doctors will discover the blockage. 1 year after that, he'll be gone. The entire family heard every word. The laughter in the dining room disappeared. Grandma slowly held her husband's hand. Victor clenched his fists beneath the table. Elena lowered her head. Lucas looked confused. Grandpa. Adrian immediately realized what had happened. He sighed inwardly. I forgot they could hear me. Grandpa simply smiled. My boy, it's all right. If my future can be changed, then don't look so sad. After breakfast, Adrian approached Professor Emilio. I need a favor. The old scientist smiled. I already know. He held up a folder. I reserved the country's best cardiovascular specialists. Adrian blinked. You. Professor Emilio chuckled. I've learned to prepare before you ask. That afternoon, Grandpa Raphael reluctantly agreed to undergo a complete medical examination. At first, he insisted. I feel perfectly healthy. Adrian quietly looked at him. Please, only one word. But Grandpa couldn't refuse. Several hours later, the examination results arrived. The lead cardiologist entered the consultation room. His expression was serious. There is a small blockage. The room became completely silent. The doctor continued. It's extremely difficult to detect. If left untreated, it could become life-threatening within a year. Grandma covered her mouth. Victor slowly closed his eyes. The timeline had been exactly as Adrian remembered. The cardiologist looked toward Adrian. How did you know? Adrian remained silent. Professor Emilio answered instead. He notices things other people don't. The doctor nodded slowly. Quote. That's an understatement. Fortunately, the blockage had been discovered early. A minimally invasive procedure was scheduled immediately. 2 days later, the surgery was completed successfully. The chief surgeon smiled as he walked out of the operating room. It was a complete success. He should live a long, healthy life. Grandma burst into tears of relief. Victor hugged his father. Lucas jumped happily. Olivia smiled through tears. Adrian quietly leaned against the wall. I did it. Grandpa will live. That evening, the family gathered in Grandpa's hospital room. Grandpa looked healthier already. He smiled warmly at Adrian. My grandson, you've saved me twice. Adrian tilted his head. Quote. Twice. Grandpa chuckled. The first time, you gave me another chance to live. The second, you reminded me how precious every day really is. Back at the mansion, a large family dinner was prepared to celebrate Grandpa's recovery. Grandma made every one of Grandpa's favorite dishes. Lucas proudly hung another handmade banner. Welcome home, Grandpa. Grandpa laughed so hard his doctor had to remind him not to overdo it. The entire mansion was filled with warmth. Later that night, Adrian sat alone in the garden beside the koi pond. The moon reflected across the calm water. He quietly smiled. One future has changed. Grandpa survives. Mom won't cry every night anymore. Dad won't blame himself. Lucas won't grow up without his grandfather. This is why I came back. Inside the mansion, everyone heard every word. No one interrupted him. They simply looked out the window, watching the quiet boy who had silently carried everyone's future on his shoulders. Far away, inside the Shadow Division headquarters, a large screen displayed Grandpa Raphael's medical report. The commander frowned. He changed another future. A masked woman stepped forward. Our predictions are becoming unreliable. The commander nodded. Then we'll stop the source. He looked directly at Adrian's photograph. Capture him alive. If that isn't possible, his cold eyes narrowed. Make sure he never changes history again. For the first time since his reincarnation, Adrian's enemies had officially decided to eliminate him. Yet Adrian remained completely unaware, as he quietly fed the koi fish beneath the peaceful night sky. Chapter 6, The World's Smartest Student. Monday morning, Reyes High School was buzzing with excitement. Teachers hurried through the hallways carrying stacks of documents. Students gathered around the announcement board. A large banner had been placed above the entrance. International Genius Olympiad. The world's brightest students will compete. The competition would bring together the top high school students from more than 50 countries. The grand prize, a full scholarship to any university in the world. Inside the principal's office, the principal smiled from ear to ear. Adrian, I've already submitted your name. Adrian blinked. Again, the principal laughed awkwardly. I didn't even ask this time. Quote. At least he's honest. Meanwhile, Professor Emilio arrived carrying a sealed envelope. This isn't an ordinary competition. He placed the invitation on the desk. The winners will also receive invitations to the Young Innovators Summit. Victor looked surprised. Isn't that where future Nobel Prize winners usually meet? Professor Emilio nodded. Exactly. Adrian quietly opened the envelope. Inside were pages of sample questions. Advanced mathematics, quantum physics, molecular biology, artificial intelligence, astronomy, economics. Adrian skimmed through them in less than 3 minutes. Then he quietly closed the folder. Too easy. The Reyes family, who later heard his thoughts, nearly choked on their drinks. Lucas stared at the ceiling. Kuya just called the hardest exam in the world easy. A week later, the national qualifying round began. Thousands of students filled the massive examination hall. Some reviewed notes. Others nervously whispered formulas. Adrian quietly sat near the back. His desk contained only 3 pencils, an eraser, and a bottle of water. No notes. No books. No calculator. The proctor announced, "You have 6 hours. Begin." Everyone immediately started writing. Pages turned rapidly. Pencils scratched across paper. Adrian calmly read every question once. Then, he began answering, without stopping, without erasing, without hesitating. Mathematics, physics, chemistry, programming, economics, essay questions. Everything flowed naturally. Only 1 hour and 38 minutes later, Adrian quietly stood up. The chief examiner looked confused. "Finished." Adrian nodded. "Yes." The examiner checked the clock. "There's still more than 4 hours remaining." "I know." The entire examination hall stared as Adrian calmly submitted his paper and walked out. Some students whispered, "He gave up. Nobody finishes that quickly. He probably left half the questions blank." Adrian simply walked home. Mom said she'd make curry today. That evening, the examination committee gathered to review the papers. One professor opened Adrian's answer sheet. He frowned. Then his eyes widened. "Wait." Another professor walked over. Silence. Soon, the entire committee surrounded the desk. One by one, every answer was verified. Perfect calculations. Perfect explanations. Perfect programming logic. Perfect scientific analysis. Finally, the committee chairman slowly removed his glasses. "I've been examining students for 40 years. I've never seen a perfect paper." 3 days later, the results were announced. A giant screen displayed the rankings. Rank 1, Adrian Reyes, 100.00%. The second place student scored 91%. The hall erupted into disbelief. Students applauded. Teachers stood in amazement. Even the international observers smiled. Professor Emilio quietly folded his arms. As expected, news spread across the country. Filipino student achieves first perfect score in International Genius Olympiad qualifier. Television stations requested interviews. Universities sent scholarship offers. Research institutions extended invitations. The internet exploded. People began calling Adrian the world's smartest student. That evening, Adrian returned home carrying nothing but his school bag. Lucas immediately tackled him with a hug. "Kuya, you're famous again." Grandma placed a chocolate cake on the table. Victor proudly showed him dozens of congratulatory messages. Elena hugged him tightly. "We're so proud of you." Adrian smiled shyly. "I only took an exam." The entire family laughed. Late that night, Adrian quietly stood on the balcony. The cool wind brushed against his face. He looked toward the stars. Knowledge isn't meant to make someone superior. It's meant to make life better. If I'm called the smartest student, then I'll use that intelligence to protect people. Downstairs, his family heard every word. Victor smiled. "Our son never changes." Far away, inside the Shadow Division headquarters, the masked commander watched Adrian's interview on television. The world is beginning to notice him. Another operative asked, "Should we wait?" The commander slowly shook his head. "No. Tomorrow, we begin the capture operation." For the first time, the danger was no longer approaching. It had already arrived. Chapter 7, The Billionaires Council. The morning after the Olympiad results, a sleek black limousine waited outside the Reyes mansion. It was followed by another. Then another. By 8 o'clock, more than 20 luxury vehicles lined the private road leading to the mansion. Lucas peeked through the curtains. "Dad, there are more rich people." Victor sighed. "I know." Grandpa laughed. "Our Adrian is becoming too popular." Inside the grand living room, some of the most powerful people in the country sat together. Chairman Miguel Valencia, the founder of the nation's largest AI company, the president of a global pharmaceutical corporation, the head of an international renewable energy consortium, several technology billionaires. Even Professor Emilio was present. The atmosphere was serious. Everyone was waiting for one person. Adrian, still half asleep. Adrian quietly walked downstairs wearing a white hoodie. His hair was slightly messy. He froze after seeing the room. Did a billionaire convention happen inside our house? The entire Reyes family heard his thought. Olivia immediately looked away to hide her laughter. Professor Emilio coughed to suppress a smile. Chairman Valencia stood first. "Good morning, Adrian." Adrian politely bowed. Quote, Good morning. One of the chairmen smiled. You've become even more famous. Adrian simply thought. That's exactly what I didn't want. Victor almost laughed. Professor Emilio stood. Everyone here has the same request. The billionaires nodded. Chairman Valencia spoke first. We don't want your companies. Another continued. We don't want your money. A third smiled warmly. We want your ideas. Adrian remained silent. The chairman of the pharmaceutical company placed several documents on the table. Children in remote provinces still die because hospitals lack proper diagnostic equipment. Another chairman added. Entire farming communities lose crops every year. The renewable energy chairman sighed. Millions still don't have reliable electricity. One by one, each billionaire presented a problem. Not business opportunities. Real problems affecting ordinary people. Adrian quietly listened. He closed his eyes for a moment. Then, he stood. He walked toward a whiteboard. Without speaking much, he began writing. Affordable modular hospitals. Portable desalination systems. AI-powered crop monitoring. Self-sustaining micro-power grids. Emergency disaster communication satellites. Low-cost water purification units. By the time he finished, the whiteboard was completely full. The room was silent. Professor Emilio smiled proudly. Do you understand now? He looked around the room. This is why I brought you here. One chairman slowly whispered. We've spent years searching for solutions. Quote, He solved them in 15 minutes. Chairman Valencia looked at Adrian. If we fund every one of these projects, will you guide us? Adrian looked around the room. Then quietly answered. Quote, Only if they're free. Everyone blinked. The technology. It shouldn't belong only to rich countries. Silence. One billionaire lowered his head. Another quietly smiled. Chairman Valencia extended his hand. You have my word. Soon, every chairman stood. One by one, they shook Adrian's hand, not as businessmen, but as partners. At the end of the meeting, Professor Emilio officially announced, from today onward, the Billionaires Council will become the Global Future Initiative. Its mission, to solve humanity's greatest problems. And its youngest chief advisor, a 17-year-old high school student, Adrian Reyes. Later that afternoon, news quietly spread among world leaders. Although Adrian's name remained confidential, rumors spread rapidly. The mysterious young genius has united the world's wealthiest innovators. Investors became curious. Scientists became excited. Governments quietly paid attention. Back at the Reyes mansion, Lucas proudly held a toy microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, Arcuya has officially become the boss of the bosses. Everyone burst into laughter. Adrian's ears turned red. That's definitely not my job. Grandpa wiped away tears from laughing too hard. That night, Adrian sat beside the koi pond once again. He looked at the stars. If everyone truly works together, maybe, the future won't need someone like me anymore. Inside the mansion, his family heard every word. Victor smiled gently. No, Adrian, he quietly whispered toward the garden. The world will always need kind people like you. Far away, inside the Shadow Division headquarters, the commander slammed his fist onto the table. The Global Future Initiative. If Adrian succeeds, our influence disappears. He looked toward dozens of elite operatives. The time for watching is over. Tomorrow night, we take Adrian Reyes. Outside, a storm slowly gathered above the city. For the first time since his reincarnation, Adrian's peaceful life was about to face its greatest challenge. Chapter 8. A school full of geniuses. The following Monday, a fleet of buses stopped in front of Reyes High School. Students crowded the windows, whispering excitedly. They're here, the exchange students. I heard every one of them is a national champion. The school had been selected to host the International Young Geniuses Exchange Program. For the next month, the brightest students from around the world would study together. Inside the auditorium, the principal stood proudly on stage. Everyone, please welcome our guests. Students from Japan, South Korea, Singapore, Germany, the United Kingdom, the United States, and many other countries entered one by one. Each carried an impressive academic record. International Olympiad winners, young inventors, award-winning programmers, published researchers, The audience applauded enthusiastically. Meanwhile, Adrian quietly sat in the last row. I hope nobody notices me. Unfortunately, Professor Emilio had already submitted Adrian's achievements to the program organizers. The host smiled brightly. And now, we would like to introduce the Philippines representative, the student who earned a perfect score in the International Genius Olympiad qualifier. Adrian Reyes. Thousands of eyes turned toward him. Adrian slowly stood. Hello. He bowed politely, then immediately sat back down. The auditorium fell silent. A moment later, everyone burst into laughter. That's all he said. He's so quiet. He actually looks kind of shy. Adrian lowered his head. Mission failed. After the ceremony, the exchange students naturally gathered around him. A Japanese student smiled. I've read your mathematics paper. It was brilliant. A Korean robotics champion added. I want to see your inventions. An American AI researcher extended his hand. I hope we can work together. Adrian hesitated for a moment, then shook each person's hand. Nice to meet you. His teammates from the science competition smiled proudly. Daniel whispered, look at that. The world's smartest students are lining up to meet our Adrian. That afternoon, the exchange program held its first challenge. Teams from different countries were mixed together. Each team received the same mission. Design a disaster response system for a coastal city. Time limit, 4 hours. Many groups immediately began arguing over ideas. Adrian quietly listened. Everyone talked at once. Until a girl from Germany looked at him. Adrian, what do you think? The room became silent. Adrian walked to the whiteboard. He drew a simple map. Then added evacuation routes, flood sensors, drone supply stations, emergency satellite links, AI traffic control, portable medical centers. Within 15 minutes, the entire system was complete. Silence filled the classroom. Finally, the British student laughed. We spent 30 minutes discussing the problem. And you solved it in 15. The others nodded in agreement. Instead of feeling jealous, they smiled. Because Adrian never acted superior. He patiently explained every detail until everyone understood. Later that day, the judges reviewed every team's presentation. One professor stood up. This proposal could actually be implemented. Another judge nodded. It would save thousands of lives. The chief judge smiled. Outstanding. First place. Team Adrian. The students cheered. But Adrian quietly looked at his teammates. They did most of the work. Everyone immediately protested. No way. You guided all of us. You even stayed after to help us improve our presentation. Adrian smiled awkwardly. We all won. Back at the Reyes mansion, Lucas listened excitedly as Victor described the day's events. So Kuya made friends from all over the world. Victor nodded. And they all want to work with him. Grandma smiled warmly. Our Adrian finally has people who understand him. That evening, Adrian received dozens of friend requests in the program's online group. Messages arrived from every country. Let's work together again. Your ideas inspired me. Please visit our country someday. Adrian quietly looked at the screen. A small smile appeared. Friends from around the world. I never had this in my first life. Far away, inside the Shadow Division's command center, a masked operative watched Adrian laughing softly with his new friends. He has more protection than expected. The commander remained calm. Then we adapt. He pointed to a map of the school. The operation begins tomorrow. No mistakes. Outside, rain slowly began falling over the city. Inside the brightly lit school, Adrian and his new friends continued discussing inventions that could help millions. None of them realized that danger was already closing in. Chapter 9, The First Life Saved. The following afternoon, the International Young Geniuses Exchange program continued as usual. Students from different countries filled the campus with laughter and lively discussions. Some worked on robots, others programmed AI models. Several teams tested renewable energy prototypes. To everyone else, it was another ordinary day. To Adrian, something felt wrong. He paused while walking across the courtyard. The breeze suddenly changed. Birds that had been singing flew away all at once. His expression became serious. This feeling, something's about to happen. At the same time, Inside a black van parked outside the school, several masked operatives watched the security cameras. Target confirmed. Adrian Reyes has entered Building C. The commander spoke calmly. Remember, capture alive. If anyone interferes, neutralize them. The operatives nodded. The mission had begun. Inside the robotics laboratory, Adrian and his international teammates were discussing emergency rescue drones. Daniel pointed toward a blueprint. What if we make the battery removable? The Japanese student nodded. That doubles operating time. Before Adrian could answer, his phone vibrated. A message from Professor Emilio. Leave the laboratory immediately. Danger is approaching. Adrian's eyes narrowed. They've made their move. He quietly stood. Everyone looked at him. Adrian, he spoke calmly. Everyone, please leave the building. His teammates blinked. Why? Trust me. The seriousness in Adrian's voice stunned them. Without another question, every one of them stood. Just as they reached the hallway. Boom! A loud explosion shook the entire building. Windows shattered. Smoke filled the corridors. Students screamed. Fire alarms echoed throughout the campus. The Shadow Division had attacked. Panic spread everywhere. Teachers rushed students toward the exits. Emergency sprinklers activated. The hallway disappeared beneath smoke. A frightened first-year student froze in place. She couldn't move. A broken ceiling beam had collapsed in front of her. Tears streamed down her face. I can't. Everyone else had already escaped. Only Adrian noticed. Without hesitation, he ran back into the smoke. Adrian, Daniel shouted. But Adrian never stopped. The smoke burned his eyes. Pieces of concrete continued falling around him. He reached the terrified girl. It's okay. His voice remained calm. I'm here. The girl looked up with trembling eyes. She instinctively grabbed his hand. Adrian lifted the heavy debris just enough for her to crawl underneath. Then, crack, another beam collapsed. Daniel rushed forward with several exchange students. Together, they pulled Adrian and the girl to safety. Seconds later, the hallway completely collapsed. Outside, ambulances arrived. Firefighters entered the damaged building. Teachers counted students. Everyone was safe. Except, one paramedic suddenly shouted, "We're missing a maintenance worker." A middle-aged janitor remained trapped inside the building. The structure had become unstable. Firefighters hesitated. Entering now was extremely dangerous. Adrian quietly looked toward the building. Then closed his eyes. He remembered the blueprint. Storage room 2. Emergency ventilation shaft. He can still survive. Without another word, he took a firefighter's flashlight. Professor Emilio, who had just arrived, immediately understood. But Adrian was already running. Inside the smoke-filled building, visibility was almost zero. The janitor coughed weakly beneath fallen shelves. He had nearly lost consciousness. Then, a familiar calm voice reached him. I found you. The janitor slowly opened his eyes. A teenage boy stood before him, covered in dust, holding a flashlight. Adrian carefully lifted the debris, supporting the injured man over his shoulder. He guided him through the narrow emergency passage. Minutes later, both emerged safely from the building. The entire school erupted into applause. Some students cried openly. The rescued janitor grabbed Adrian's hands with tears in his eyes. You saved my life. Adrian simply smiled. I'm glad you're safe. News helicopters soon arrived. Television reporters filled the campus entrance. Breaking news flashed nationwide. Genius student rescues trapped school worker during explosion. The internet exploded. People praised Adrian's courage. But Adrian quietly sat alone beneath the familiar acacia tree. This isn't about being called a hero. Someone was in danger. Anyone should have helped. Back at the Reyes mansion, Victor watched the live broadcast with trembling hands. Elena couldn't stop crying. Grandma hugged Lucas tightly. Grandpa looked toward the television. Our grandson has become far stronger than I ever imagined. Late that night, Professor Emilio visited Adrian. He placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. Today, you changed another future. Adrian quietly looked toward the night sky. In my previous life, that janitor died. Silence filled the garden. Professor Emilio finally understood. This was the first life you personally saved. Adrian slowly nodded. Yes. A peaceful smile appeared on his face. Far away, inside the Shadow Division headquarters, the commander watched the failed operation report. Every operative had been arrested. Every plan had collapsed. He slowly stood. If ordinary agents cannot stop Adrian Reyes. He looked toward a sealed steel door. Then it's time. The massive door slowly opened. A lone figure stepped into the light. The Phantom, the organization's strongest operative, had finally accepted the mission. Writing. Volume 2 Chapter 10. The Silent Genius Who Changed the World. 1 week later, the story of Adrian Reyes had spread across the globe. Not because he was the richest. Not because he was the smartest. But because he had risked his own life to save another. News channels from dozens of countries replayed the footage. A quiet 17-year-old running back into a collapsing building. The world gave him a new title. The Silent Genius. Back at Reyes High School, students welcomed Adrian with thunderous applause. Teachers smiled proudly. Even the exchange students stood and bowed respectfully. Adrian scratched his cheek awkwardly. They're making this more embarrassing than it needs to be. Daniel laughed. You'll never escape fame. Later that day, the miracle scanner officially completed its final clinical evaluation. The results were astonishing. 99.98% diagnostic accuracy. Portable, affordable, safe. Professor Emilio looked at the report with trembling hands. This will transform healthcare. The Global Future Initiative immediately approved mass production. Victor stood up. Reyes Group will build the factories. Chairman Valencia smiled. My company will handle worldwide distribution. Another billionaire added. We'll donate the first 100,000 units. Adrian quietly listened, then spoke. Start with the poorest communities. Everyone nodded without hesitation. 6 months later, the first miracle scanners arrived in remote villages. Doctors who had never owned advanced diagnostic equipment stared in disbelief. A rural clinic in the mountains detected a child's heart defect early enough for surgery. A fisherman was diagnosed with early-stage lung disease. An elderly woman discovered breast cancer before symptoms appeared. One life after another was saved. Inside a small provincial clinic, a young doctor held the scanner with tears in her eyes. If we had this years ago, my father might still be alive. She looked at the small inscription engraved on every unit. Technology exists to save lives. No inventor's name, no company logo, just those 5 words. Meanwhile, Adrian continued attending school. He still carried the same backpack. Still ate lunch beneath the acacia tree. Still quietly tutored classmates who needed help. Nothing about him had changed. Except the people around him. Children waved at him whenever he visited hospitals. Scientists requested his advice. World leaders invited him to conferences. Yet Adrian politely declined most invitations. I'd rather eat mom's cooking. At the Reyes mansion, the family laughed after hearing that thought. Grandma proudly placed another serving of fried chicken onto Adrian's plate. Lucas grinned. No 5-star restaurant can beat Grandma's cooking. Everyone agreed immediately. One evening, Professor Emilio visited the mansion. He carried an old wooden box. Inside was the highest honor awarded by the Future Research Alliance. The Medal of Humanity. Only 3 people had ever received it. Professor Emilio smiled warmly. Adrian Reyes. For changing the future. For saving countless lives. And for proving that kindness is the greatest form of intelligence. I present this medal to you. Adrian quietly accepted it. He looked at the medal for a long moment. Then, he placed it back inside the wooden box. Professor Emilio blinked. You don't want to display it. Adrian smiled softly. My family smiling is enough. Silence filled the room. Grandma quietly wiped away tears. Victor proudly looked at his son. Elena hugged Adrian tightly. Grandpa laughed. Our grandson still hasn't changed. Far away, inside a prison cell, the captured Shadow Division operatives watched the evening news. The Phantom, who had never completed his mission, quietly lowered his head. So, we lost. The mysterious organization's influence slowly crumbled. Without Adrian realizing it, his inventions, his courage, and his kindness had inspired millions. That night, Adrian stood once again beside the koi pond. The moon reflected across the calm water. He remembered his first life. The endless meetings. The lonely penthouses. The mountains of wealth that could never buy happiness. Then he looked back at the brightly lit mansion. His parents laughing together. Lucas chasing the family dog. Grandma calling everyone inside for dessert. Grandpa watering the flowers he had once been destined to leave behind. A gentle smile appeared on Adrian's face. This is my greatest achievement. Not becoming a billionaire again, but protecting the people I love. Inside the mansion, the family heard every word. No one interrupted him. They simply smiled. Because they knew, the quiet boy standing beneath the moonlight had already changed the world. Not through power, not through fame, but through compassion. And his story had only just begun. End of Volume 2. Thank you for listening. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. See you next time. Coming in Volume 3. The Future Beyond Tomorrow. A mysterious invitation from an international organization reveals that Adrian is not the only person who remembers another timeline. New allies, hidden enemies, and world-changing secrets await as the silent genius faces his greatest challenge yet.